money mindset in terms of seeing maybe parents struggle financially, it does have an impact on you, but it can have two different impacts on you. So for me, I think it made me more frivolous with my money, whereas other people, it makes them hoarders of their money. So because they've grown up with scarcity, they think any money they have to hold. Whereas for me, I'm like, I don't know, I'm going to see money again, so let me spend it. So it definitely has an impact on you. I just think it's worth taking time to understand the impact it's had on you, and if it's things that you think is not going to serve you moving forward in your life, then you have to take those active steps to correct it, because otherwise you just continue down that same vicious cycle which you don't want to do.
I'm Max. Welcome back to Black Income Creators Podcast, and I'm with Tolu Frimpong today. Tolu
Frimpong, yeah.
So is that Nigerian and then Ghanaian?
So I'm fully Nigerian. My husband's Ghanaian, hence the mix of the two.
All right, I was thinking, okay. All right then. And Tolu, do you want to introduce yourself to our audience?
Sure. So my name's Tolu Frimpong, and I'm a financial coach and finance content creator. And I'm really passionate about helping people transform their relationship with money and achieve their financial goals through intentional budgeting, side hustling, and just really creating that money plan and working that plan.
Yeah. And it's kind of like practice what you preach, because you've been through a sort of money journey, or like, relearning money journey. Do you want to sort of tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. So, oh my gosh, a few years ago now, my husband and I got ourselves into a big amount of debt, over £36,000 worth of debt, when we bought our first home. And at that time, when we initially got into that debt, I thought we owed about 20 something thousand pounds, which is still a lot of money, to be honest. But it wasn't until we sat down and done the numbers that we realized that it was £36,000. And that debt came about after we bought our first home. So when we bought that first house, we had all the money that we needed for like the deposit and stamp duty, surveyor fees, etc. But what we didn't have was money for renovations, and that's because that wasn't part of the plan. But there was basically a whole lag between when we got the house, our offer accepted, and when we got the house. It was about a year wait. And during that time, the people that were living there just basically destroyed the house. The kitchen roof had caved in. The house was just a total mess. And so what we ended up doing is not wanting to pull out of the house buying process at that stage, because we were so far in the journey. And as you know, house prices go up very often. So we didn't want to have to start the process of looking again. So we came up with a master plan as to how we were going to take out these loans and then get lodgers to stay in our house that would help to offset those loans. And then once those lodgers were there, they would kind of pay the money towards those loans that we had taken out, and we'll just continue to pay the mortgage. But unfortunately, the plan for lodgers fell through because we struggled to get people to rent the house when we had 2 young children. I don't think we factored that into the planning process. So we ended up with all this debt, which we then had to pay ourselves. But if that wasn't enough, taking out those loans for renovation, we just kind of got into that cycle of borrowing, and we started using our credit card. We went on holiday a couple of times and just furnishing the house to the best standards on credit. And it just kind of spiraled out of control, to be honest.
Well, it's interesting, isn't it? Because I think my parents told me that it takes 2 years once you've bought a house for your finances to settle again. Like, and you buy, you go back almost to that 2-year thing. It's a reset. And in your case, it was unforeseen renovations. But in a lot of people's cases, it's like, actually, it's furniture, because you're moving up. So, you've got enough furniture for a 1-bedroom flat. Now you've got a 3-bedroom house.
Yes.
That's clear. Yeah. So there's always stuff, I think, with how, unforeseen costs with buying a house that and you can't not live your life just because you bought a house.
That's exactly it. And that's what happened to us. But I do think that we could have reined it in a lot more than we did. And the debt was a lot higher than it needed to be honest.
Yeah, but who is the more risk averse one in between you and your husband?
Risk averse? Oh, definitely I'd say my husband, to be honest. Yeah, he doesn't like risk at all. Yeah, he's very calculated, very by the book, whereas I'm just like, we'll figure it out later kind of person. And so it's just interesting us managing our differences over the years, because we're very opposite with our relationship with money, and just in life in general, to be fair, we're very different.
Yeah, so that's the thing, isn't it? So you until you have a money issue in the relationship, you don't recognize the difference in your money approach. So like when you're both earning and there's nothing, you don't feel it, the difference. But then when there's a problem, it's like Exactly,
that's exactly. And to be honest, you say that, but from early on in the relationship, I'd say I knew that we were different in terms of our relationships with money, in terms of me being the spender and him being the saver. So just little things like me having the same pair of shoes in like 3 different colors, and he just couldn't understand why you need 3 pairs of shoes, number one, and especially the same shoe in different colors. He's just like, why? All you need is a pair of shoes. And he just always been really like that. He won't buy a new pair of shoes until the shoes he has are like run down to the ground, where I'm more like, no, I need variety, I need options. I buy stuff just in case. Like, you don't know, in the future you might need to wear that dress to an occasion. Whereas he's just like, why are you buying clothes for the sake of buying clothes? So I think we've always had those differences when it comes to our relationship with money and our spending of money. But I think it became a lot more of an issue, or more apparent, as we bought the house. And yeah, the stakes were a lot higher, I guess, especially when our kids came into the picture. It was a thing that we actually needed to address a lot more.
So then I suppose you went through that journey. What was the sort of first thing that you guys did to sort of like get yourselves back on track, apart from sitting there and actually working out that it wasn't 20, it was 36?
Yes, I think the first thing was acknowledgement that there was an issue, because I think for about a year after us acquiring all that debt, there was a lot of burying our head in the sand, I would say. So you would think that that would be a topic that we would discuss it often, or it was a subject of contention all the time, the fact that we have all this debt hanging over our head. But actually, we just used to ignore it. So it just wasn't something we discussed. We knew it was there, kind of like the elephant in the room, just being ignored. And it was like that for quite a while, until it was like my husband read a book called The Total Money Makeover by Dave Ramsey. And when he read that book, he told me to read it. And back then he was on this whole personal development journey. So he kept on recommending all these different books that he had read, and I never read any of them. However, something about that book, when he mentioned it to me, I thought, let me read it. And I read it, and it basically outlines the steps that you can take to achieve debt freedom. And I think it was only upon reading that book, I realized that actually we can do something about this. I think because it just seemed like such a big situation, or a mountain that we couldn't climb, we just ignored it. But I think once reading that book, it kind of empowered us to realize that we could take control of this financial situation that we were in. So it was us sitting down and having that conversation after reading that book to be like, okay, we need to do something about this, because it was getting to the point where we weren't paying our mortgage on time. It was coming to the date that the mortgage was due to be paid, and the balance wasn't there. So it would defer to the next payment attempt, which would be like 2 weeks later. Thankfully, at that time, my husband was getting paid fortnightly, so he would get paid in time for the mortgage payment to come through. But that cycle was continuing quite a bit. And so us sitting down to have that conversation was just so necessary. And once we had that conversation, okay, no, we need to do this. And first thing we had to do is create a budget. Looking back at our expenses over the last 6 months to a year was a real eye-opener. Because up until that point, I thought we had an income problem, but it wasn't until we sat down and looked at the numbers that it was a spending problem. I mean, this was a good 6 years ago. So actually, if we were in that position now, I don't know how we would survive, because our income, the gap between our income and expenses is a lot tighter now than it was back then. But back then I thought it was really tight, but actually we were just overspending. So it was just things like eating out every week, go anywhere someone invited us to go, we would go. If I saw something online that I wanted to buy, I would buy it. So I was living as though I had money when I had all of this debt hanging over my head. And I think the debt trap is that if you're keeping up with the minimum payments, you think it's okay. So long as you're, keeping your creditors at bay, then it's fine. And that's what we were doing for a while. But actually, all we were doing is pretty much just covering the interest and not actually paying down that debt. So it was once we sat down and we looked at the numbers and started looking at where all our money was going, thinking, oh my gosh, how am I giving so much money to Uber, to McDonald's, to all of these companies when I have all of this debt to pay? So it was a steep learning curve for us. And it was very difficult, I would say, at the time, because being used to just buying what you want to buy when you want to buy it and not thinking about the consequences, to now saying no to yourself, it was a big challenge, I would say. But that was what we had to do. It was literally put ourselves on a strict budget. I went from shopping at Tesco, having my groceries delivered to my house, to now having to shop at Aldi. And back then I was like, Aldi, I can't shop at Aldi. But I had to humble myself because I didn't have Tesco money, was the reality. I don't have Tesco money, so who am I fooling? I need to just humble myself and shop where I can afford to shop. And that's what we had to do. So it was things like that, like brand switching. I was a snob when it came to certain brands. It's like baked beans. I can only eat Heinz baked beans. I can never eat anything else. But all of those things just had to go out the window, because we realized that we have something that we need to achieve, and it was going to take sacrifice to get there. And it was a lot of sacrifice. It was 2 years of grind and 2 years of like denying ourselves pleasures, like just the little pleasures of life, like the things that make you happy, or the things that make me happy anyways, like going to McDonald's drive-thru for breakfast. those things make me happy. Those kind of things I had to not do anymore. I had to make my own breakfast. It takes a few extra minutes in the morning. It doesn't taste as good as McDonald's, but it's what you've got to do when you're on this debt-free journey. So yeah, it was a lot of sacrifice, I would say, at that time.
And it's interesting that you said that, obviously Dave Ramsey resonated with you because a lot of the work that you do is kind of based on faith, family, and the finances. And so that's very similar to the sort of Dave Ramsey model. So do you think that's maybe why it resonated as opposed to like other self-help finance books?
Yes, I think so too, to be honest. Yeah, definitely. I definitely saw a lot of synergy between what he teaches and I guess what the Bible teaches and what I believe to be true. So it was definitely a lot of similarities that made me draw to him. And just in terms of him and his daughter as well, and the way he teaches her about money and the way she has adopted a lot of those teachings, it just really resonated with me because I was like, these are the kind of values that I want to help to instill in my children, hopefully in the future as well. So yeah, definitely, I'd say we have a lot in common in that respect.
And do you think, because I mean, what I found is that a lot of people's money mindset is inherited, so they've not inherited, it's learned. So they've kind of seen their parents, do money in that way, and therefore they've learned. Or do you feel like it's almost like a reactive thing? So your parents struggled, therefore you wanted to overspend to sort of enjoy it because it wasn't there when you were a child.
I think it's a combination of both, definitely. I think we can't dispute the fact that what we see is what we do a lot more so than what we're told. So I think a lot was learned from observation. So things like my mom, for example, so let me throw my mom under the bus, but just things like, going to the shop to say you're buying one thing and then coming back with all these extra things. It's like, those are habits that I've adopted as well, and I have to catch myself and be like, what am I now showing my boys? I'm showing them the same thing. So it's like, okay, mum says she's going to go and buy bread, but she's come back with bags, loads of shoppings. So it's those like little things that you learn through observation as opposed to necessarily being taught it. And I think also money mindset in terms of seeing maybe parents struggle financially, it does have an impact on you, but it can have two different impacts on you. So for me, I think it made me more frivolous with my money, whereas other people, it makes them hoarders of their money. So because they've grown up with scarcity, they think any money they have to hold. Whereas for me, I'm like, I don't know, I'm going to see money again, so let me spend it. So it definitely has an impact on you. I just think it's worth taking time to understand the impact it's had on you. And if it's things that you think is not going to serve you moving forward in your life, then you have to take those active steps to correct it. Because otherwise you just, continue down that same vicious cycle, which you don't want to do.
And can you see it with your boys already? Can you see the ones that have got like who've reacted a certain way and the ones that haven't? Maybe the eldest is a little bit more aware of the situation as compared to the younger ones who don't have a clue.
I feel like they've all picked up some of my bad money habits, but equally, I think, thank God for my husband because he brings the balance. So with me, for example, they know when they go to the shop, if they ask enough times, they'll probably get it. Whereas with my husband, it's like they don't even bother asking. They go to the shop. If the daddy says we're going to go buy bread, they're not even going to ask for anything else because they know that's all they're getting. Whereas with me, they know that, oh, mummy's easier to persuade to buy things. Or just generally, I think last academic year, they got into this habit where after school, we was always going to the shop. So this academic year, I was like, no, this has got to stop now. It's too much. We can't just be buying stuff for the sake of buying stuff. Like, it's not every day after school you need a treat. What are you being treated for? So it was me making this conscious effort this term to be like, no, we're not just going to buy stuff from the shop. We've got things at home. We've gone food shopping. We're going to eat what we have at home. And that's taken some unlearning, and it's been a bit difficult at times with the boys because we passed the shop on the way to and from school. So after school, they was like, oh, can we go to shop? No, we're not going to shop. We're going home. And yeah, me trying to be like stern is a bit of a challenge because I'm soft at heart, but it's like, no, I need to teach them that you don't just buy for the sake of buying and spend for the sake of spending. Because I think I did teach them that bad habit, and it's now up to me to correct that in them.
Whilst they're still young, I guess.
Exactly.
It's the only time. Otherwise, it's too late when they hit those teenage years.
Definitely. But I think they are a bit more aware of how much things cost as well, which is something I don't think I had a clue of when I was younger in terms of the value of a pound, whereas they're a lot more conscious of that now. So like when we go shopping, for example, we're showing them the prices of things in the store so they can see price comparisons. So you don't just pick the one that you see that you want. Actually, there might be a cheaper version that is just as good. Why not just go for that? You don't have to just spend all your money all at once. Or like when they get their Christmas money and birthday money and we go to Smith's toy store, they want to just buy something that, let's say, is 150. Like one of my sons loves Lego, and Lego is so expensive, the good ones. Like he's seen a piece that he wants. It's like £289. I'm like, you've got £50. That's not the same price. So it's teaching him that actually things cost money, and then understanding the value of what you're putting your money towards. So you spent your, I don't know, £50 on something that you don't really care about, when you could have maybe saved that money up for the next few months so that you can buy the thing you really want to buy. So it's a journey, but I mean, my eldest is 10, my youngest is 1. So hopefully as we continue to work with them, they will be better stewards of their finances growing up than I was.
Do you think it's how do you think being in London has affected like your views on money? Because I'll give you an example. Like I went to Grimsby the other day, for a work project, and my boss has a 6-bedroom, 3-bathroom house that she bought for 450,000, and she was like, "Come to Grimsby, it's amazing." And I was like, "Yeah, I'm not about that life." However, I can see that they've got a lot more disposable income because the prices of like houses are so much cheaper, blah blah blah. And so I think there's a London mentality towards money as well because of just how expensive everything is.
Oh, definitely. I think for me, being in London, life is just expensive, right? So just this year, actually, my husband and I are selling up and moving outside of London. And this is something I didn't want to do for the longest of time, but it's just too expensive to stay here. And I've just got to be realistic with myself. Do I want all my money to just be tied to this house, or do I want more disposable income to do other things with the children? So yeah, London is expensive. I think it's stressful. It's just intense. I think because I've got a lot of family now that have been moving out of London, and when you go and visit them and you just see how people are there, I can't explain it, but I feel like people are more free than they are generally in London. And I get it because we're under a lot of pressure, generally speaking. Like a lot of people are under financial pressure, so they don't have the liberty to just be smiling all the time because they're thinking about the bills that they have to pay and how expensive everything is. So I think, yeah, it is very expensive living in London, and I think it does affect your attitude towards money. I mean, you just mentioned somebody's getting a 6-bedroom house for 400,000. That 400,000 isn't going to get you what, a 1 or 2 bed in London if you're lucky. Not even a 2 bed, it'll get you a 1 bed if you're lucky. So your money goes so much further, right? Outside, you have all that space, all that land, and yeah, it's a lot.
And it's good for the children as well, actually, to live in a space that feels safer, I think, in terms of just being able to do more.
Absolutely. I think that's a big part of it as well. I can't lie. The area I live in now with 4 black boys, I don't feel comfortable staying here, which is a sad thing to say, but generally it is, there's a lot going on around here. So for me, I'd rather go somewhere that I'm just not filled with anxiety every time they leave the house.
So before this became sort of your job, working with people, helping people to sort of sort out their own finances, what were you doing?
So my background's in marketing. So I've worked in marketing for like 15 years-ish. And yeah, I've always done digital marketing, traditional marketing. So that's newspaper online, in the media, in the press, PR, like that's been my sphere. And I guess it kind of lended itself nicely to the work I do now in terms of the content creation and the social media, because that kind of thing I did in my day job is just taking those skills to now apply it to something that I'm a lot more passionate about. Because I was marketing for like travel companies, content companies, actually did UGC companies, what other companies was I doing? IT companies. So I've done all different kind of industries marketing, but personal finance is where my heart is, I'd say.
And when people come to you, are they already typically in crisis, or are some people sort of self-aware enough to be like, I'd really like to work things out so that I can buy a house in 3? Do you know what I mean?
Exactly. It's a combination of both. I'd say it's a combination of both. Most people they have money, but it just disappears. So they're kind of in a position I was in at that time when we was in the debt. It's like the money's just not making sense. Like I have all this money coming in, but I have all this money going out, and it's like I feel like I'm living paycheck to paycheck. So I think I have a lot of people in that space where it's like I'm living paycheck to paycheck, but I shouldn't be. Why am I in this situation? So that's one sphere of people. I've also had people that I work with that didn't think they needed help, but they said they'll give it a go anyway, and they're like, oh wow, okay, this thing actually does work. Because I think it's just helping them step away from their situation, so kind of getting that bird's eye view of their numbers. Because when you're so close to it, sometimes you don't see it, but it's like when you step away and give yourself that breathing space to look at it from afar, you're like, oh, actually, okay, this is the situation, and working with them through that.
And how did you guys keep yourselves motivated going through your own journey? Because you said it was 2 years to sort of get out of the sort of 36K worth
Yeah.
of debt. I mean, how did you get through that? Because it's easy to slip back.
Oh, of course it is. I think it's the whole small wins along the way. So with us, like the first credit card that we paid off within a few months was, I think that was the, what can I say, the light bulb moment. Like, wow, this thing is possible. Because just that satisfaction of calling the credit card company to be like, cancel this card, only for them to offer us more money on top of that. It's like, no, stay, we can up your credit limit. I'm like, no, I don't want it anymore. Leave me alone, kind of thing. I think now that I'm on the other side of it, I'm like, actually, I don't hate credit in the way I did at that time. But at that time, I was like, no, I don't want any more credit. But yeah, at that time, I'd say we stay motivated by the fact that it was those small wins. I used to have a debt tracker as well, where I used to like color in these circles when I would pay off a certain amount towards that balance. So for each credit card, you had a tracker, and it's like coloring in each time you pay it down. So that is sad, but it actually works in terms of visually seeing the progress that I was making at that time, and that kind of kept me motivated as well to pay it down. I think also the bigger picture, just thinking about what we wanted to do on the other side of paying off that debt helped us stay motivated as well, because it's like, actually, once we because up until that point, right, the money was just slipping through our fingers, and now we're intentionally putting money towards paying off this debt. So our mindset was like, well, what will happen once we've paid off that debt and we still have this money? We can do so much more with it. And I think that was a big motivator as well.
So, in terms of the debt payment and the credit card, were you also like, you were tracking it? Were you also tracking like your credit score? Because I know in the States, it's a big thing, isn't it? They sort of
no, I wasn't actually looking at credit score at the time. No, I wasn't actually. I know I had a bad credit score, and I know I have a good one now. But in terms of keeping up to date with how it was tracking, no, I wasn't. I think that's because we had already bought our house. So for me, the credit score, not that it didn't matter, but it didn't matter for me at that time. So yeah, no, I wasn't actually really tracking it at that time.
Well, I think in the States, the average black person's credit score is about 200 points lower than a white person's credit score. And that's because, like you say, it's almost like payday, that payday immediacy, kind of always living in an overdraft, always living on credit cards, paying off the minimum. All of that is just a common part of, you borrow 50 here, borrow 20 there. So a lot of people have like a sort of 400 credit score over there, because theirs only goes up to 850, the average one, rather than 1,000 that we have here. So yeah, there is something around that I find quite interesting, is that the kind of, then when they're doing the Dave Ramsey stuff, they typically are looking at their credit score because they can see paying off a car. Yeah. Whereas with us, it's like you can see the amounts going down, etc.
Exactly, and that was enough for me at the time. And I think with that, I feel like we're sold to a lot more. Like I feel like they're just always being constantly told we're not enough and we need more. And I think that is why a lot of people get into that debt trap. So you've got things like ClearPay and what's that other one, Klarna, that it's just so readily available for us now. So you just feel like once upon a time you couldn't afford to get that thing. Now it's affordable because you can pay for it in 4 or 6 monthly payments, and it's a vicious cycle that just spirals out of control.
I didn't even know what Klarna was until a year ago, and I was like, "What's Klarna?"
Really? Lucky you.
I think they typically market to a certain age,
younger people, exactly.
So it's people who are kind of leaving uni up to about 40, I think. So they are quite clever, whether it be ASOS or I don't know, these shops, Shein or whatever it's called.
All of them,
So because I don't shop there, then I literally missed the whole when it became a huge thing, and it worries me because it's somebody could just not work for a few months just because of the way that the economy is, and then they're
in big trouble.
In debt.
Exactly. That's exactly it. And it's what's sad about it is it's for things that you don't need. So it's different if you're I don't know, paying in installments for your phone contract. Fine, you need your phone, right? But you don't need address to pay for address in installments. Like you could just do without that address. And that frustrates me a lot, because like you say, they target specific audiences. It's like back when I was at uni and you had all those banks come in to offer us overdrafts as freshers. You're like 18, 19, you have no knowledge about finances, and they're giving you credit, which we didn't even know at the time was to me, I just heard free money. I didn't even know that this was something I have to pay back later, because it didn't come with education. It's just like, oh yeah, you're entitled to this, have it. And now they've got that, plus they've got all of these things like Klarna. I mean, you can even get food on payment plans as well. So it's like you're ordering, Uber Eats and all of them, you can pay with Klarna. So you're paying in monthly installments, and it's too much.
So what, I would order an Uber Eats today, and
Yeah.
then 3 months later, I'd have
Yeah,
paid
yeah,
off yesterday's thing.
exactly.
That makes no sense.
But it does make sense when you don't have enough to pay for it. So if it's £20 meal, now you can only pay £5, and that's all people are thinking. Oh, it's only £5, but no, you're paying this for months. And if you miss the payment, the interest on that alone is just crazy. So
So that's
yeah,
where they make their money. So only if you miss a payment. If you don't,
exactly.
well, all right.
Yeah, for a
Interest on.
period. I'm sure they must have a time limit for when it's free, interest free. But that's how they lure you in, and then yeah, once you're in that cycle, it's hard to break it.
And are you seeing any patterns in terms of your clients around gender, age, single status, that kind of thing? And do you typically work with women who are of a certain age, or do you know?
Yeah, women generally, most of them usually are around my age group. So I say my age group, like my age, but in the 30s, I'd say in the mid to late 30s are my typical audience. But once in a while, I get like girls in their 20s, like in their early 20s, and I love it because I'm like, wow, I wish I was like you at 22, thinking about planning for my financial future. But generally speaking, it's in the 30s to early 40s, and generally speaking, it's like mums and wives and or single moms with children. It tends to be people with kids, is what I find as well, which is interesting.
And that's a separate struggle, isn't it? If you're sort of like a single parent, yeah, how do they stay motivated? I guess having you there to support, because I think I could see easily how they'd be like, yeah, convinced by the kids to overspend in the shop. Like you say, it's hard to say no.
Absolutely. Because that guilt, that mum guilt is a real thing, right? And it's like you want to give your kids everything that you never had. And especially if like the father, for example, is not present, that then you overcompensate even more. And yeah, it can be a difficult one for mums, I'd say. But I think it's, like you said, having an accountability body and having those financial goals clear, like front of mind, to be like, okay, I'm not denying my child and being a bad mum. I'm actually building something for their financial future, which is going to benefit them in the long run. So it's just that educating piece and giving them that empowerment to be like, no, you're not a bad mum for saying no, because you're going to be saying yes to them in the future.
Yeah. And you talk about zero-based budgeting. Could you give me a little bit of a explanation? Because I'm like, I don't know what that is.
Sure. So that's the budgeting process or budgeting style that I learned from Dave Ramsey, and I tell everyone about it because I've got a spreadsheet that I created that I use as well. And it's essentially where you have all your income. So whether you get paid once a week, twice a week, or you have different income streams. So that could be your salary plus your child benefit plus, I don't know, money from a partner, any kind of income, that all gets put into the spreadsheet as your budget income for the month. And then expenses, so you predict what all your expenses for the month are going to be. So if it's your first time doing that budget, you would want to look at your last 3 months worth of expenses, looking at your bank statements, to really get a clear picture on where your money is going, as opposed to just guessing. Because it's so funny, every time I do that exercise with clients, they're like, oh yeah, I only spend like £400 a month on groceries. But then actually when they sit down and mark their bank statement from the last month, they realize that they spend a lot more, because you don't realize those quick trips to Tesco Express, or that impulsive trip that you took on the way home from work and you picked up some extra bits. All of that adds up, and that's not really accounted for when you're just guessing in your head how much you spent that month. So it's really looking at where you're looking at your income, your expenses for the past few months, and then creating a budget for that month. So your income and your expenses predicted for that month, and once you tally that all up, it should equal zero. So you want to plan for all of that income until you get to zero, so that all the money's been allocated and given a job to do that month. So because I think with money, it just kind of slips through your fingers, right, when you're not intentional about telling that money what to do. So it's just that getting in front of the money and creating a plan for the money, as opposed to the money just slipping through your fingers.
Then that plan would include like your savings, investments,
Yes.
etc. So there is an allocation.
Yeah, so there's different budget categories. So you have your housing, your food, your utilities, transport, all of the categories. And you even have I always tell clients as well to have a budget for fun as well. So allocate some amount of money for yourself for guilt-free spending, so that you have money that you can just spend on whatever you want for yourself without feeling bad for spending that money. Because I think a lot of the guilt when it comes to shopping comes from knowing that that money should be somewhere else. But I think once you've been intentional about planning for that money, then you know, okay, this money's mine and I can do what I want to do with it without feeling bad about it.
And where do people struggle the most with the zero-based budget?
It's the sticking to the budget. So it's one thing creating that plan, right? It's another thing following through with that plan, because life happens and you might think, okay, yeah, I'm going to spend, I don't know, 400 on groceries this month. But then you get to the grocery store, you see this new special offer, or you see this new product that you want to try, you add that to your trolley. And before you know it, that £400 becomes 500. Now you have £100 overspend, which you need to get from somewhere else in your budget. So I think that becomes an issue because it is quite a restrictive budgeting method. It can be, because it's like you're saying in advance, this is what I'm doing for the month of January, but life happens, things come up in the month that you may not have anticipated. So it's then, okay, what do I do about it? But I think what's great about this budgeting method is because it just highlights the fact that we need to be intentional with our finances, because even upon all of that planning and budgeting, life still happens, and then there's other things that you need to account for. So how much more, if you didn't do that, will things be difficult?
And when you have a couple, do you advise that they do it together, so that it's one budget, or do you think it's actually better if they have their own and then they sort of pull something towards sort of like, joint budget, but that they actually are learning themselves, which is the better option, which seems to work better in your experience?
So in my experience, and what I recommend to people, again, everyone could do what they want, whatever works for your family, your household. But I think working together as a team is important especially when it comes to money. I really think that doing things together helps you go together in the same direction, because I feel like if one person's doing this and the other person is doing that, then how is there synergy, and how are you pursuing the financial goals in unison? But I do appreciate that it doesn't work for everybody, but for us, that's how we've done it, and it's always worked that way. So when we're doing the budget on the income, all the income comes into that budget, and then we budget accordingly. And then even when it comes to our fun allowance, I say fun allowance, like our pocket money, we literally allocate a certain amount to each of our fund money accounts, and then that's ours to do what we like. But everything else, we kind of set financial goals and put money together. Yeah, we work together financially.
And you said that you've been in marketing for 15 years, etc. And that's actually helped shape, I think, the what you do now, etc. What's the bit about this job that you enjoy the most?
The financial coaching. Yeah, I think for me it's helping people feel empowered to manage their finances and helping them see that there is hope for their situation. Because I think when sometimes working with clients initially, they think that there's no way out, like I don't earn enough, or my income is too low and I'm not good with money. You hear that all the time, like I'm just not good with money. But it's like when you empower them to know that, no, it's not that you're not good with money, you just weren't given the tools to manage your money well, and letting them have those tools and feel like, wow, I can take control of this, and see them take control of their finances and see them achieving their goals, paying off their debt, starting to save, starting to invest. It's amazing. Like, it's such a rewarding feeling, because you're like, wow, if I hadn't had these conversations with you, you would have still been in that dark space where you're thinking there's no hope. But now you left me, you have hope for your financial future. And yeah, that's just an amazing experience, to be honest. And just the DMs that I get from people that have been able to pay off their debt or save their deposit to buy their first house, people that thought that they were impulse spenders and they could never get a rein on their spending, that are now telling me, no, Tolu, I have savings for the first time in my life. It's amazing. Like, it's just such a priceless experience. Like, it's really good. It's amazing.
And in terms of, I mean, you mentioned it, you touched upon it briefly at the beginning around, some of it will be around debt management and some of it will be around maybe side hustles, etc. What are the popular side hustles that are sort of you're seeing in that space that you talk about, sort of those women in their sort of 30s? Where are people typically leaning towards? I'll be honest with you, I could never budget now, only because you know what I mean. I did it when I was younger, but I couldn't do it now. But I could maybe make more money. I think that's how I would probably see it, as being like, if I have more income, then I can continue to spend at my level. To reduce it, it's like I've got so many mortgages, etc. It wouldn't work in the same way. But so what side hustles are you seeing that are sort of emerging as really popular ones?
Do you know what I see a lot of people doing is coaching. So a lot of people are taking skills that they already have, things that they're good at, and now coaching other people in that area. So if something that you just think is second nature to you, so like I follow one lady now, she's a homemaking coach. You wouldn't think that that's a thing. Like, she just teaches other people how to look after their home, so how to get on top of it. So be a homemaker and not let it drown you and overwhelm you. I see that. Fitness coaches, so Yeah, people go to her for coaching for that. So I think coaching is a big one. Like loads of people are coaches in different areas. So it might be a life coach, it might be an organizational coach, it might be a coach like a financial coach. Like I know quite a few people that do financial coaching. So that's a big thing as well. I think people packaging their skills into courses. That's a thing as well. Like a lot of people do online courses. I think it's a sticky one, that course creation world, because there are a lot of scammy courses out there, but there are also a lot of good courses out there where people have taken 20, 10, 15 years worth of experience and knowledge, and they've packaged it into a course that you can do in a couple of days. So there is value in some of them, but it's just doing your research and due diligence to make sure you don't get scammed and lose your money. I think that's a big thing. I think things people are doing is creating digital products as well. A lot of mums are doing that because, again, it's something you could do so easily, like with tools like Canva. You can design something. So even like going back to what I mentioned earlier about the debt trackers that I did, I've created many of those on Canva myself and put them on my website. So people do things that like that a lot. Reselling is a big one as well. I know a lot of mums that do that. So not just reselling things from around their home, but then turning it into a business model where they're buying stuff and then reselling it at a higher price as well. So that's quite big.
And in terms of like cost of living and the sort of economic recession that's not being spoken about, are you finding that that's affecting people in a sort of different way, for example? Like,
Oh, absolutely. Like it's hard out here. So like I said, even speaking of my personal situation, once upon a time I had an income problem where a spending problem, sorry. Whereas now it's not a spending problem, it's an income problem. I'm looking at ways to increase my income because my costs are just too high. And that's the same for a lot of people that I work with. So once upon a time, it's like you look at the budget, and by the time you do a couple of changes here and there, it's like, oh, you've got an extra £300 that you could do something with. Whereas now it's like, oh no, you're in minus 500 every month. Something needs to change, otherwise you're done, kind of thing. And it's having those hard conversations with people where it's like, I don't want to face this, but I have to face it now. So for a while you can bury your head in the sand like I was doing when I was in all that debt, but once it gets to a point that you have to face it head on. And a lot of the first coaching sessions are like that, where it's like we do the numbers and it's like, I knew it was bad, but it's like I didn't know it was this bad. And it's having those difficult conversations. What are you going to do about it? Because this is where you are. You can't stay here. So are you going to start learning a new skill so that you can take on this side hustle, or are you going to skill up so that you can apply for a promotion at your workplace, or just switch jobs generally? How long have you been there? You've been there for 7 years, but I love it. It's comfortable. It's easy, but you're minus 500. What are you going to do about it? So it's having those difficult conversations with a lot more people now than once upon a time where it was just like, no, you just weren't managing the numbers well. Now it's, no, you're actually in a deficit. What can you do about it to get that income up? Because there's only so much cutting back that we can do at this point. So I shop at Aldi now. Where do I go after Aldi? There's nowhere cheaper for me to shop for my groceries. But yeah, Aldi's a lot cheaper. Aldi and Lidl are the cheapest supermarkets in the UK. So if you're already shopping at Aldi and Lidl, where you go in to reduce that food cost, it can't get lower. And that's the thing with a lot of people's budgets. It's like, okay, I've done all those cutbacks. I've cut all my subscriptions. I don't have Sky anymore. I don't have Disney Plus, but my money is still finished at the end of the month. Now what do I do? So that's when you have to start having these difficult conversations. So even go back to my situation, like I said, we're leaving London. There's only so much I can stay here for and just be like, I'm a Londoner through and through. It's like, no, this London is not serving me. I need to do what's best for my family. And if it means moving further outside of London, then that's what I'm prepared to do. And it's having those difficult conversations with families, telling them like, what are you going to do about this? So are you prepared to make those sacrifices? Maybe renting solo in a one bed just doesn't serve you right now. Consider moving into a house share. It's not comfortable, yes, but it's going to free up some of the money in your budget for you to now start saving and start doing things for your financial future. So it's just having really difficult conversations with people and just letting them see the reality of their situations. And it's up to them to make those decisions about what they're going to do about it. Because if it doesn't work on paper, it doesn't work.
In terms of next steps, I mean, obviously you guys have got a move in your future, so personally, but in terms of next steps for you as a brand, as a sort of coach, where are you looking towards?
So for me, it's the podcast. So I launched a podcast myself, Not Another Money podcast, like 6 months ago. And that's my baby. That's my project that I've been working on like tirelessly for the last 6-7 months. So it's just really growing that podcast, trying to get sponsors for the podcast so that I can take the production to another level, because I have all these ideas of how to add segments to the show and get more guests on, more interesting guests. Not that the guests that I've had so far are not interesting, but even more amazing guests, and have great conversations with finance experts, but also to put the spotlight on people that have achieved great things in their personal lives and their finances, overcome just different kind of adversities, and just hearing their stories and giving them that platform that they ordinarily wouldn't get. So that's a big part of what I'm going to be working on. And I'm also looking to bring out a course at some point this year as well, just to kind of put all my knowledge and experience in the one place that people can just, if they don't want to do the one-to-one coaching myself, they could just do that and work through at their own pace. So that's something that's to come hopefully this year as well.
I think the bit that we haven't really touched upon is around people, like people in business, because they're a certain, those ones who are like business owners, etc., because they have a different kind of money worry. The average person, do you know what I mean, in terms of cash flow and stuff like that. Do you get quite a few business owners or?
Yes, self-employed. So ones that not even, more self-employed than actual business owners, but yes, similar kind of thing. And for them, it's like they have irregular income. So they're just like, budgeting doesn't work for me. So it's actually, again, empowering them to know that it can work for you if you do it in the right way. So it's just teaching them how to budget based on their lowest income, rather than each month when the money comes in trying to budget. So budget based on the lowest income that you get every single month, so that those months where you get more, then you have extra money to then put towards your different budget categories. So just doing that work with them, and they're like, oh, okay, yeah, that makes sense. Like, I don't know, I didn't think of that. It's like, yeah, it will definitely make a big difference if you just budget based on your lowest income, as opposed to just trying to balance it out when the money comes in each month, because those bills come every month irrespective of how much you're earning, right? So we need to make sure we've allocated funds for that.
And are you thinking maybe things like live podcasts or like events and stuff?
Oh, I love that you said that, because that's a dream. That would be absolutely a dream come true, to be able to do like an in-person event. And that would be amazing. One day, God willing, that would be fantastic.
2026? Yeah.
Yes. Oh, that would be mad. I hope it happens, that I can do this clip, like post this video. I'd be like, oh, I remember when I had this conversation with Maddie, we spoke about it. So no, absolutely, that would be incredible. It's not on the agenda for this year, but it's something that I could only wish for. But hopefully one day.
So where can people find you? I mean, obviously I know you're on Insta, etc., but what are your handles?
So I'm at Tolu Frimpong everywhere pretty much. My website is tolufrimpong.com. The podcast is Not Another Money podcast on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Music, I think, all the podcast streaming platforms. And other than that, I'm on YouTube, Instagram, Twitter a little bit, but mainly YouTube and Instagram, where you can find me, Tolu Frimpong, where I share all my money content and just a little bit about my faith, finance and family as well.
You've got your own website as well, haven't you? So
yes, tolufrimpong.com.
Yeah, so they can, because obviously there's the digital products and stuff like that.
Yes, exactly. And if you want to book coaching as well, you can do that from my website.
Yeah. So that's brilliant. Well, thank you, Tolu. That's been really, really useful.
No, I love that. No, thanks so much, Maddie. I really enjoyed today's conversation. Thanks for having me on the show.